You will forgive me anyway. That's what I tell myself sometimes, especially when the silence in this house presses on my chest, so hard that I can hardly breathe. You used to rest your fingers on my collarbone. Do you remember? There was this gentle way you'd flatten your palm over my heart, as if to feel whether it was beating for you. You never asked questions back then. You just knew, or maybe you only pretended to. Listen, I'm going to walk you through how we got here, step by step, like a therapist might, but with a twist. I'm not looking to heal you. I'm going to lay it out, detail by detail, as clinically as I can, until you realize that all of it, every quiet breath, every corner of every room, every small betrayal, led us to this final moment. If I sound cold, well, that's because something inside me froze. No, froze isn't the right word. Melted, then hardened into a shape I no longer recognize. So let's begin. I still remember how you leaned in once, so many years ago, pressing your ear against my chest, whispering, "I hear you." You had that half smile, like you found a secret you wanted to keep. I adored those small gestures, that soft hush of your voice, the way you smelled of lemongrass shampoo in the morning. Every memory of you was bright. Once. Now, each memory feels like a scalpel slicing across old scabs. Stop me if you've heard this part. It's our 20th anniversary, the day we were supposed to celebrate. Call the kids, make dinner reservations, maybe recall some good times with friends. But 2 months before that day, I saw an advertisement for a hotel while scrolling on my laptop. The name came up. Some chain hotel near the outskirts of the city. Cheap marketing tagline, white sheets on the website images, an escape from the everyday, or some nonsense. I froze. Because that picture, those sheets, that lamp in the background, everything matched the snapshot I once glimpsed in your phone. Room 213. I remember the number because you left the key on the kitchen table by accident. A small plastic card with a red 213 scribbled on the paper sleeve. You lied about it later, said it was an old thing from a trip with your sister. But I recognized that brand of hotel, recognized the little swirl in their logo. When I saw that ad, I didn't just have an epiphany, like a switch flicking on in a dark room. It was more like a slow meltdown, an acid burn. My insides corroded. I tried to push the thought away that afternoon, but it came roaring back the next morning. And then again, every time your phone buzzed. You see, I work in it. It's my job to notice patterns, to see how little bits connect in the grand scheme of code. And that's how I noticed the pattern in your behavior. The new outfit receipts. The abrupt girls' night out, with no actual friends around. The hushed phone calls with phrases like, "No, he doesn't suspect anything," spoken in a voice far too calm. All the while, I said nothing. Just stored the data, compiled it, built a file in my head. At first I told myself I was crazy, that I was merely paranoid. But the final straw was your laughter in that recording. I found an audio file on our shared computer, mislabeled as shopping list. I only opened it because I was cleaning out old folders. 30 seconds of your voice, breathy, intimate, and then a man's voice. Not mine. The conversation was mundane on the surface, but the laughter was so different from the one you gave me. Yours was deeper, freer, like you discovered a new part of yourself. Listening to it, I felt my heart pound so violently that I thought I'd burst an artery. I replayed that audio far too many times. Maybe that was masochistic. Maybe I wanted the proof to be absolutely undeniable. I recognized you, every syllable, every exhalation, and I recognized the background hum of an air conditioner, the same type those hotels use in each room. That dull mechanical drone told me exactly where you were, so I planned how I'd respond. You see, I don't go in for dramatic outbursts. I'm not one to slam doors or throw things against the wall. Instead, I operate in controlled increments, like a psychotherapist with a notepad, scribbling observations while the patient rambles on, unaware of how each confession digs them deeper. That's how I treated you. I gave no sign. I slipped a small audio file onto my phone. A short, clipped, I know. 4 syllables that gave me a raw kind of power. I played that file when you weren't looking, whenever you rummaged in the fridge at night, or when you slipped on a new pair of earrings in the bathroom mirror, or swiped a fresh coat of lipstick across your mouth. I turned up the volume, just enough so you could hear. You'd spin around, startled, eyes wide, maybe even frightened, and I would just stand there, silent, waiting. You never asked me to explain. Maybe you were too afraid to confront what I knew. Maybe you believed I'd found out, or maybe you just suspected. In any case, it gave me a slow, simmering satisfaction. The tension grew in the house, day after day. You'd look up from your design sketches, catch my gaze, swallow hard, and return to your work without a word. I started to sense that you were unraveling inside. There's a glint in a person's eyes when they suspect their illusions are about to be shredded. It's a mixture of shame and defiance. You had it. One evening, I followed you. Yes, I actually got in my car and tailed you. I told you I'd be working late, but I left the office early, parked on a side street near downtown. You walked into a hotel. Our city is full of them, but this one was special, wasn't it? A blockish, modern building with tinted glass and a lifeless green logo. I waited in my car for 15 minutes, then 20. Then I stepped out and walked into the lobby. The carpeting smelled of industrial disinfectant, the kind that never fully masks stale cigarette smoke. I asked at the front desk for a Jacob Foster, feigning confidence. The board clerk typed a moment, frowned, then pointed me upstairs. I remember my footsteps echoing in the corridor. The thick hush you only get in well-carpeted places. No voice, no moan, no direct sound, only the hum of air conditioning. Then I saw the half-open door with a gold plate reading 213. My heart hammered in my ears, my throat seized, but I forced myself forward. I had no intention of knocking. I didn't want a civilized conversation. The door was ajar. Someone must have left it like that, or it never latched. I peeked inside. You stood there, his hands on your waist, your body pressed against the desk, and your blouse undone just enough to expose your bra. The desk lamp was the only light, throwing soft shadows across your skin. You weren't fully undressed, but the intimacy of the moment was unmistakable. The tension in the air was thick, the kind that pulses. The man's face was turned away, but I knew he was younger by the shape of his shoulders. He whispered something I couldn't catch, but you let out a small laugh. Yes, that same laugh from the audio clip. It was throaty, raw, the kind of sound a woman makes when she's lost in a rush of lust or excitement. And I just stood there, clenching my fists so tight my knuckles popped. I felt my lips part in shock or maybe rage, but no sound came out. It was like I was pinned behind glass. Suddenly he leaned in, and you pressed your lips to his. The slow inevitability of it was like a punch to my gut. Your hand slid to his belt, fumbling. I heard a metal clink. I think I might have whispered something, or maybe I only imagined it. My heart raced so hard that my vision blurred. My mouth was bone dry. I tasted copper on my tongue, realized I might have bitten my cheek. I stepped back, quietly, carefully, then turned and walked away. I didn't run. Each step felt mechanical, like I was on autopilot. In the elevator, I stared at my reflection in the polished metal doors. A man in his late 40s, face pale, eyes burning with a fury that threatened to tear open his chest. But I forced it down. My phone, clenched in my hand, displayed the short audio file label. I know. I almost played it out loud in that empty elevator, just so I'd have some noise to drown the swirl of emotions. But I didn't. Instead, I let the silence weigh on me, and I listened to my own heartbeat echo in my ears. You see, that was the moment I realized I wasn't going to confront you in some messy spectacle. I wasn't going to crash through that door, fists swinging, or drag you out by the hair. That's not my style. Instead, I was going to let this play out. I wanted to watch you squirm. I wanted to savor your guilt. Let me be perfectly clear. Even then, I still loved you. There was a kind of twisted adoration inside me that refused to vanish. But I also hated you. The two emotions warred within me, fueling a toxic brew of anger and heartbreak that I can't fully explain. My voice might tremble describing this, but trust me, I hold on to it. Rage can be a friend sometimes. I left the hotel and drove aimlessly around the city, passing dimly lit bars, locked offices, empty parks. My mind was on fire. I replayed the image over and over. Your blouse unbuttoned, your shoulders tensed in pleasure, that man's hand gripping you like he owned you. Over and over. I wondered if you'd come back home that night with the faint scent of hotel sheets in your hair, or if you'd shower at his place first, if you'd creep upstairs when I was asleep, if you'd climb into bed beside me, only half thinking about the lines you were crossing. Let's skip ahead. I didn't sleep that night. I had coffee at 3 a.m., pacing around the living room. The next morning, you came in from the garage, claiming you'd gotten up early to buy groceries. You looked exhausted, though you tried to hide it with careful makeup. I studied your face, the tension around your eyes. You tried to muster a smile. I said nothing. I watched as you rummaged in the fridge, and then I tapped my phone. That short audio file rang out in the stillness. I know. Your entire body jerked. The milk carton nearly slipped from your hand. John, you said, turning, but your voice was all wobbly. What was that? I just shrugged. Gave you this half-smirk, like a shrink whose patient just revealed something scandalous. You heard me, I said. Then I left the room. That was enough to set your nerves on edge for days. You want to know how it escalated? Let's talk about the lead-up to our 20th anniversary. The kids were off at college, so the house was ours alone. Plenty of silence for suspicion to grow. I began dropping hints, small references about hotels, or advertisements, or 213. Little triggers to watch you flinch. It was almost surgical, the way I probed your reactions. Meanwhile, you grew more paranoid, more distant. You'd stare out the window as if expecting something or someone. Probably that lover of yours, or maybe you expected me to snap. And then came the final confrontation. By then, you must have sensed that your affair was doomed to be discovered if it wasn't already. You moved around the house like a ghost. Your eyes dull, your gestures stiff. That morning of our anniversary, we didn't even exchange pleasantries. No happy 20th. No hugs. Nothing. I cooked eggs. You pretended to check your phone. My mind was racing with everything I planned to do. Because I had a piece of paper. Yes, a simple slip, but a weapon all the same. At the top, it had your name. Below that, one sentence. Yes, I betrayed you. A confession. Typed out by me. I left a blank line for your signature. I waited until after lunch. Then I found you in the living room, staring absently at some design sketches. I set the paper on the coffee table in front of you. You blinked at it, then looked at me. That's when I started talking, low and methodical. Eleanor, I said, I've been patient. I've watched you sneaking around with your lover. I've listened to your little secrets. And I know everything. I know about the rooms, the phone calls, the excuses. I know you think I'm going to explode and leave you. But I'm not. I'm staying. I'm staying because I want to see exactly how you handle the guilt that's eating you alive. Now, take that pen. Sign the truth. Go on. Write it down. Admit it. Your hand trembled. Your face pale. For a moment, I thought you might defy me, might fling the paper to the ground and storm out. But you didn't. You reached for that pen like it was a hot poker, and you scrawled your name beneath that single sentence. Then you stared at me with tears brimming in your eyes. You swallowed, opened your mouth, but no words came. I leaned in and kissed your hand, a mockery of gentleness that must have made your stomach twist. Then I turned and walked away. That night, I slept on the couch. My mind wouldn't stop reeling. I felt a pit in my gut, a kind of swirling emptiness. Now you'd admitted your betrayal, but I didn't feel the surge of triumph I expected. Instead, I felt something hollow, something that told me I was losing a part of myself. But I didn't back down. I pressed forward. Over the next days, I kept that signed paper tucked between the pages of our old family Bible, right where we once kept our wedding vow text. The irony tasted bitter, but I swallowed it anyway. You see, I had always believed that if you chain a person with their own guilt, they'll eventually break. And that was my plan for you. I wanted to watch, day after day, as you navigated life knowing that I had your confession in my back pocket. A simple slip of paper, but loaded with immeasurable weight. I watched you move around the house like you were caged. Sometimes you tried to make small talk, asked if I wanted coffee or if I needed anything from the store. I'd respond politely, curtly, ignoring the bigger conversation. And each time, I saw a flicker of pain in your eyes. You were paying for your betrayal, and I was orchestrating it. But then something shifted in me. Maybe it was a few weeks later, or a month. I'm not certain. The timeline blurs. The days turned into an endless repetition. Me quietly fuming, you quietly suffering, the house filling with unsaid words. The man you'd slept with, your lover, seemed to have vanished. Maybe you cut it off, or he got bored. I don't know. But the problem was, I still loved you. After everything, after all my petty torments, there was a part of me that couldn't let go. I caught a glimpse of you late one night, standing by the kitchen sink. You had your head bowed over an empty glass, shoulders shaking in silent sobs. I stood in the doorway, unseen, and I felt an ache inside my chest. You'd once been the woman who made me feel whole. Now you were reduced to this trembling figure under a single dim light, broken by your own actions. Yes, but also by my cruelty. I crept back upstairs before you noticed me. In bed, I stared at the ceiling. I remembered the first time we kissed, so many years ago, the rush of emotion that left me breathless, the way your fingers wrapped in my hair. That memory felt like it belonged to different people. I wanted to banish the pity that was creeping into my heart, but I couldn't. When morning came, I went to the bookshelf where the Bible was wedged between old photo albums. I pulled out the sign note, that wretched slip of paper. I stared at the words. Yes, I betrayed you, and I realized I didn't want to keep it anymore. It was like an anchor, dragging me down into a spiral of resentment. So I tore it up, not with satisfaction or a sense of absolution, but in a numb haze. Little scraps of paper fluttered into the trash can. I placed the Bible back on the shelf. That was the moment I decided to let go of the vengeance that had been poisoning me. But letting go of revenge doesn't mean forgiving you. Not then, at least. It meant releasing myself from the cycle of hatred. That distinction was crucial. I didn't show you the torn pieces. I just left them there under some coffee grounds. You never looked in that trash can. Maybe you were too consumed by your own guilt. The next day, I didn't tap my phone to play I Know when you walked in. I simply let the day pass. That evening you approached me in the living room. You looked hesitant, as though you expected me to lash out. Instead, I just watched you, eyes half-lidded with exhaustion. Your voice trembled. John, you began. I wanted to say. I held up a hand. Don't, I said softly, but the softness had a rasp behind it. My voice threatened to break, but I forged on. Not now. Maybe not ever. You blinked rapidly, tears forming. But I can't live like this. I let out a slow exhale. You chose this. That was your decision. Mine was to stay. So here we are. A silence pressed between us. Eventually, you turned and walked away, shoulders slumped. I sat there, feeling equally miserable. But I didn't take it back. I couldn't. The days turned into weeks. Our daily routines resumed, at least on the surface. You working on design projects in your small home office, Me diving into my IT job from a laptop in the den. We talked about bills, about groceries, about the kids. We didn't talk about the affair. We didn't talk about love either. We just existed under one roof, bound by a strange mix of habit, guilt, and a vestige of loyalty that neither of us dared to define. Friends asked if we were okay, noticing our subdued demeanor. I lied. You did too. We both said we were just busy, tired, work stress. Nobody probed too far. Maybe they suspected trouble but didn't want to intrude. Our children called once in a while. I kept the conversation light, letting them believe everything was normal. A father's duty, I suppose. One night, around midnight, I awoke with a jolt, my heart pounding. I'd had a dream, more like a nightmare, where I walked into a room and saw you with him again, only this time the walls closed in and I couldn't breathe. I sat up in bed, drenched in sweat. I pressed my palms to my eyes, trying to steady my breathing. Then I heard a creak from downstairs. Slowly, I went down to the living room. You were standing there in your robe, hugging yourself, eyes red-rimmed. You must have heard me coming, but you didn't turn around. I approached, carefully, like approaching a frightened animal. Your voice was quiet. I can't sleep. I swallowed, my own throat feeling like sandpaper. Neither can I. You shifted, hugging yourself tighter. I think about what I did, and I hate myself for it. But I'm afraid to even say that out loud, because I know you won't believe me. And maybe you shouldn't. My heart squeezed. So talk. I'm listening. Sort of. A bitter remark, I know, but it's the best I could offer. You turned to face me, and I saw tears smearing the faint traces of mascara under your eyes. It started innocently, you whispered. I don't know, validation. He gave me compliments, attention. I felt desirable again, and it spun out of control. I never planned to hurt you like this. I let out a short laugh, the kind that scalds the throat. You talk like you're on my couch, explaining your dreams. So, you needed validation. Fine. People need a lot of things. Most of them don't commit adultery to fill those needs. You flinched. I almost felt sorry for how harsh my tone was. Then my voice wavered, surprising even me. What's worse is, I still want to protect you. Like a part of me wants to hold you and say it's okay. But it's not. Don't you see how messed up that is? Your shoulders shook. I do. And I know I have no right to ask for forgiveness, or even for you to hear me out. I stood there, fists clenching and unclenching. My voice dropped to a near whisper. I'm not your therapist. I'm your husband. But after everything, maybe I'm just a bystander in your life now. You tried to speak, but a sob caught in your throat. I wanted to rage at you, to throw every accusation in your face. Instead, I just let out a low, pained breath and left the room. Let you stand there with your tears. Maybe that was cruel. Maybe that was a sliver of mercy. In the following days, we exchanged a few more awkward conversations. You tried to discuss therapy, couples counseling, something. I would just raise my eyebrows and say, "You want me to open up about my feelings now?" How considerate. Over and over, I undercut your attempts with sarcasm. Each jab felt justified at the time. I couldn't just unsee you locked in that embrace with him. Then, one evening, I heard your phone buzzing. You were in the shower, some unknown number. Without guilt, I peeked at the screen. Jacob Foster. My stomach dropped. I accepted the call without speaking, letting him talk. He sounded anxious. "Ellie, you there? Look, I've been thinking. We should meet. This can't just end like this. I have things I need to say to you." I listened, my hand trembling. Then I ended the call. My reflection in the phone's black screen stared back like a ghost. So he wasn't gone after all. He was lurking in the background, waiting. My blood roiled. Yet a part of me felt an odd surge of pity for him. Too, was he just a selfish jerk, or had you roped him in with the sane illusions of romance? Possibly both. You came out of the shower, hair damp, wearing a thin robe. I confronted you, phone in hand. He just called. You froze. Who? I bristled. Don't play dumb. Jacob. He wants to talk to you. You exhaled shakily. I changed my number, or I tried to avoid him at least. He must have gotten it from somewhere, maybe a mutual friend. I don't want to see him anymore. It was a mistake. My face twisted in anger. A mistake. Sure. A little fling, right? My voice dropped lower. Let me guess. You want me to believe that you're done with him, that you regret everything, that you're moving on. Tears welled up again, and you sank onto the bed, hugging a pillow. Yes, you whispered. That's exactly what I want you to believe, because it's true. I'm done with him. I want. You bit your lip, as if struggling to form the words. I want us back. A savage laugh erupted from me, sharper than I intended. Us? There is no us, just a broken shell of a marriage. You want to pretend you can glue it all back together. My voice caught, and I had to swallow hard before I could continue. What if I can't look at you without picturing the two of you together? You drew in a ragged breath. I deserve that. I can't force you to unsee anything. All I can do is say I'm sorry and live with the consequences. I shook my head, turning away. My heart was pounding. My fists clenched so tight that my nails dug into my palms. I was 2 steps from telling you to get out, that I'd had enough. But something stopped me, the same twisted loyalty that kept me from filing for divorce. So instead, I just left the room, feeling like my own anger was going to devour me. The next day, I found you in the backyard, quietly watering the small garden. The sky was overcast, a typical gray. You were wearing old jeans and a sweatshirt, hair tied back. You hardly looked like the elegant woman I once knew. Yet there was a certain vulnerability in the way you leaned down to touch the leaves of a basil plant, as if grateful it was still alive. I stood at the threshold of the patio, hands shoved in my pockets. Hey, I said eventually. You turned, startled, water sloshing out of the can. I have something to say. My voice sounded calmer than I felt. You nodded, staying silent. I continued. I'm not going to talk to that guy for you. If he calls again, I'll block him. But this, whatever we have left, it doesn't get fixed with an apology or a phone call. Your eyes flickered with hope, or maybe desperation. I know. This is just me telling you that I haven't thrown all your stuff on the lawn or changed the locks, I said. But if you think that means I'm over it, you're wrong. Part of me is stuck in that goddamn hallway, looking at you with him. Maybe I'll never leave that place. But for now, I'm staying under the same roof. Because. I paused, the words lodging in my throat. Because I spent too many years building this life to toss it. And maybe a shred of me wants to see if you can earn back what you destroyed. You set the watering can down and turned the spigot off. Then you faced me. Your expression was raw. I'll do anything, you whispered. I wanted to sneer at how cliché that sounded. Yet the quiet sincerity of your voice caught me off guard. My mouth opened and closed, searching for something to say. But I found nothing. So I gave you a curt nod and walked back inside, leaving you there in the chilly air. If that were the end, it'd be too neat. We'd have a tense standoff, then eventually find some half-resolution. But life isn't that clean. Jacob tried calling you again, and again. He left voicemails you ignored. At some point, you told me he was showing up at your office. That's when I confronted him for the first and only time, outside your building. I'd been sitting in my car, waiting. Sure enough, he arrived, a tall, younger man with a confident stride, wearing a sleek jacket. He looked around like he owned the sidewalk. I stepped out of my car and strode up, my footsteps echoing in the crisp air. He turned, saw me, recognized me from your occasional social media photos, perhaps. He tensed. Mr. Hampton, he said, a cautious note in his voice. I stopped a few feet away. You want to keep seeing her. He blinked. Look, it's not your business. It is my business. I cut him off. my tone cold as stone. You think you can waltz into our marriage, have your fun, then keep haunting her like a ghost. She doesn't want you around anymore. Do I make myself clear? He squared his shoulders, eyes narrowing. I care about her. I'm not some random fling. My laugh was low, dripping with cynicism. That's exactly what you are. She sees it now. Maybe that stings your ego, but she chose me. The words tasted bitter, but I spat them out anyway. He shook his head. I don't think you understand. She was unhappy with you. She needed more. My temper boiled. I took a step closer, fists clenched. You think you know her needs. You think you're some savior. Let me be your therapist for a moment. You saw a married woman, older, maybe in a rough patch, and you pounced. That's your style, right? Sweep in, show some attention, get what you want. Well, the show's over. She's done with it. Stay away. He opened his mouth, probably to argue. But I glared hard enough that he paused. Then I said quietly, if you contact her again, I won't be so polite next time. For a moment, I thought he might challenge me, maybe try to be heroic. But he must have seen the coiled rage in my stance. He just gave me a final glare, then turned and walked away, shoulders stiff. I watched him go, my pulse hammering. I wanted to hate him, but part of me hated myself more. Because a small voice inside me said if I'd given you the attention you craved, he'd never have existed in your life. That's the kind of guilt that erodes a man. When I got home, you were in the living room, eyes puffy. I told you I'd spoken to him, that he wouldn't bother you again. You stared at me, lips parted, an unspoken question trembling there. Maybe you wanted to know if I still loved you, if we had a chance. But all I said was, he won't show up again. Then I trudged upstairs. You didn't follow. Sometimes, I think the real turning point came a few months later. We were in the kitchen on a drab Saturday morning. We hardly spoke. I was rinsing dishes. You were wiping the counter. A radio station was playing softly in the background. Some talk show. You reached for a mug and your fingers brushed mine. Something about that fleeting contact tore a hole in my defenses. I set the plate down, turned off the water, and spoke in a voice that felt foreign to my own ears. I want to try counseling, I said. Couples therapy, I mean. I can't do this on my own. You stared at me, startled. Then your eyes filled with tears, and you nodded vigorously, like you couldn't believe I'd finally offered. Yes, you said, voice trembling. Yes, I'll do whatever it takes. I braced my hands on the edge of the sink, breathing fast. Don't get your hopes up, I warned. I still carry that memory. If I can't bury it, this might end anyway. You swallowed hard. I know. But I'll go. I'll talk. I'll try to prove. I cut you off with a firm gesture. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for me. Because I'm sick of living with my guts twisted up every time I see you walk through a door. You nodded, tears slipping down your cheeks. Then you reached out, touching my arm gently. This time, I didn't pull away. I let the warmth of your hand bleed into my skin for a second, long enough to remember how once, long ago, we were happy. Therapy wasn't a quick fix. We sat in a cramped office with pastel walls, across from a middle-aged therapist who asked all the standard questions. How did this affair start? How did it make you feel? I gave curt answers. You cried more than you spoke. Sometimes I offered snide remarks. It was messy, slow, humiliating. But in the swirl of it all, I found glimpses of truth. We dissected every wound. I realized that you felt lonely in our marriage for years. My focus on finances, my tendency to withdraw. You realized that your solution to that loneliness was to chase a fleeting romance that left deeper damage than any distance between us. Our counselor prompted me to express anger in words instead of coldness. I tried. Some sessions ended with me storming out. Others ended with you sobbing into my shoulder. Then there were moments of clarity, where I'd see the spark of the woman I used to love. Sometimes we'd laugh over a memory from the early days of our relationship, some silly story about how I proposed, or how we handled the fiasco of our first home. Those moments were a fragile bridge between the past and the uncertain future. I'd cling to them, then wonder if I was a fool for doing so. I'd be lying if I said it all wrapped up neatly. Even as the months passed, I wrestled with nightmares. The mental image of you pressed against that desk in the hotel room never left me completely. But with time, therapy, and your persistent efforts, I felt my rage begin to recede. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. I wouldn't call it that. More like acceptance. I accepted that the woman I married was capable of wounding me in the deepest way. I also accepted that she could be capable of remorse, change, and a recommitment. Whether that was enough to rebuild our marriage remained to be seen. Eventually, we learned to talk again. Real conversations, not just about chores or finances. I watched you gradually let go of your own shame, stop flinching at every mention of your betrayal. I stayed, day after day. For the first time, we began to truly hear each other. There were setbacks. Triggers that set me off, phone calls I didn't trust, nights where you'd look at me and see only condemnation. But each time, we dug in. We argued. We cried. We repeated the same damn lines. We inched forward. I remember a specific evening. We were in the living room, the lamp casting a warm glow over the worn furniture. I picked up a photo album, one from when the kids were small. You sat beside me, hesitant but curious. We flipped through pictures of the two of us, younger, eyes bright with possibility. I lingered on a shot of you hugging me from behind, both of us grinning like idiots at the camera. You wore an old college sweatshirt. I wore a baseball cap. There was so much love in that moment. As I studied that photo, my chest tightened with a bittersweet ache. Then, I felt your hand slip onto mine. Your fingers laced through, tentative. I felt the pull of old resentments, but something deeper too, something that felt like the seed of renewal. My throat constricted, and I said in a quiet tone, "We were happy then." You nodded, eyes glistening. Yeah, we were. We sat there, the album open on our laps, the hush of the house surrounding us. Outside, a breeze rustled the trees. Inside, the tension that had ruled us for months lifted a little. Not gone, but lighter. I leaned my head back against the couch, closed my eyes. For the first time in a long while, I didn't see you in that hotel. I saw you as the woman I married, the woman who once pressed her ear to my chest to hear if my heart beat for her. I exhaled, and a whisper escaped my lips. "I miss us." Your grip tightened on my hand. You didn't try to speak. Maybe that was best. We let the silence envelop us, though it felt like a gentler silence than before. No longer a punishment. More like a fragile peace. Time doesn't heal wounds automatically, but it can dull the edges. In the months that followed, we navigated a complicated path. You found new ways to show me you cared, surprising me with small gestures, cooking my favorite meals, leaving handwritten notes on my desk that said, "I'm grateful for you." At first, I scoffed at them, or threw them away unread. Slowly, though, I began saving them in a drawer. It was a shaky process, full of stumbling steps and uncertain glances. We never forgot what happened, but we learned to carry it differently. You canceled the phone number you had, blocked him on every platform, made it clear that your affair was over. I had my doubts, my fears. I checked your phone sometimes, feeling guilty about the distrust, but I did it anyway. You caught me once and just nodded, understanding that I couldn't blindly trust yet. That was the new normal. One day, out of nowhere, you approached me with an envelope. You looked nervous. Inside was a certificate for a short trip, just a local weekend getaway at a small lakeside cabin. You said, "I want us to try starting over, even if it's just for a weekend." I hesitated, my guard instantly shooting up. The idea of a hotel still made me shiver with memory. But this was a different place, different circumstance. After a long pause, I nodded. I wanted to see if we could breathe in a new environment, away from the echoes of these walls. We went. We spent 2 days by the lake. The cabin was rustic, wooden floors, a stone fireplace, a wide porch overlooking still water. We brought groceries, cooked simple meals. We walked along the shore in comfortable silence. That first night, we sat under the stars, each lost in our own thoughts. Then you turned to me. "I'm not looking for your forgiveness yet," you said, your voice wavering. "I just want you to know how sorry I am, truly, and how much I need you. That's all." A lump formed in my throat. I looked at you, seeing the flicker of moonlight in your eyes. I thought about how many times I'd been on the brink of leaving, how many times I wanted to lash out in vengeance, and how I still, despite everything, felt drawn to you. I swallowed. My voice trembled. "I hear you." It wasn't a grand declaration of forgiveness or love, but it was honest. You nodded, tears glimmering on your cheeks. We sat quietly after that, listening to the crickets. For once, I felt no need to speak further. My anger was no longer a boiling wave threatening to drown me. It was more like a low tide, receding though sure to return in smaller ways, over time. And by time, I mean many months, maybe even a year. Those waves became less frequent. We kept attending therapy sessions. We started sharing some affectionate gestures. A touch on the shoulder, a gentle back rub after a tough day, a spontaneous hug when one of us was upset. Each moment felt like a small victory, a reclaimed territory in the war for our marriage. There were relapses, heated arguments, but we fought them out honestly. No more silent sabotage. Eventually, I moved back into our bedroom. It was my decision, and you looked almost shocked when I brought my pillows in from the couch. That first night, we lay side by side, not touching, but breathing the same air. It felt monumental. We didn't make love, not that night. That came much later, in a moment of tender vulnerability that neither of us tried to force. When it did happen, it wasn't fireworks. It was slow, cautious, filled with tears on both sides. After, we lay there, arms wrapped around each other, as though we were clinging to a lifeline. Maybe we were. I'd be lying if I said the anger never resurfaces. I still get flashes of it sometimes. A stray thought, a random trigger, a scene in a movie that mirrors our story. In those moments, I see red. I want to remind you of everything you did, demand an explanation for the 100th time. But I've learned to talk to you about it instead of punishing you. And you've learned to meet me in that raw place with empathy, without making excuses. That's how we survive. So here we are, months after your betrayal. When I look at you, I no longer see only the memory of that hotel room. I see a complicated woman with regret in her eyes, a longing to mend what she broke, and a willingness to stand by me through the repercussions. I can't say I fully trust you, but I trust your intention to be here, to do the work. And that intention is enough for me to keep trying. One evening, I went to the bookshelf and found the Bible again. The slip of paper was gone, of course, shredded months ago. But I recalled how it once held your written confession. Instead, I found an old pressed flower, a rose petal from our wedding day, stuck between the pages. I brushed my fingers over it, remembering the vow we made all those years ago. It felt like a quiet echo of who we used to be, and maybe who we still could be, in some form. That's when I understood. Maybe real love isn't about never feeling betrayal. Maybe it's about confronting it and finding a path through the wreckage, if both parties are willing to bleed, cry, and piece themselves back together. I realized I still wanted you, not the perfect version of you, but the real you, flaws and guilt included. And I wanted to be the man who could accept that reality without losing himself. As for revenge, that beast slunk away into the shadows. I no longer needed it. I found something more powerful than vengeance, the resolve to heal, to see if there was still enough life in our bond to keep us afloat. Whether we succeed or fail in the long run is still uncertain. But right now, in this living room, as I watch you flipping through channels on the TV while I sip my coffee, I feel a fragile peace in my chest. A sense that for better or worse, we're rebuilding something. You glance over, catch me staring. I expect you to flinch, but instead you give me a small, questioning smile. And for a second, I see a spark of that old warmth in your expression. My heart stirs. I return the hint of a smile. We've come a long way from that hateful silence, and the short audio file echoing, I know. Am I foolish for staying? Maybe. But a part of me believes that if there's any chance at salvaging what we had, it's worth the risk. Because the truth is, despite everything, every scalding moment of betrayal, every quiet tear I shed into the darkness, I still love you. Even now, I can't fully deny it. And though you might never fully deserve a second chance, I'm learning that real love rarely fits neat definitions of deserving. So let me end this like a therapist might, but with a grin that's not entirely bitter. Each scar we carry has a story behind it. Yours and mine, they run deep. But if we keep walking this road, hesitant, occasionally stumbling, maybe we'll reach a place where those scars don't define us. A place where the memory of that hotel is just a bruise on our shared history, not an open wound. And if that day comes, maybe I'll finally be able to say out loud, I forgive you, and maybe you'll finally be able to believe it. Until then, we keep living under one roof, sharing quiet mornings and uncertain nights, trying to reassemble a marriage that once felt unbreakable. That's the reality we're facing. No illusions, no pretend absolution. Just day-by-day efforts, a fragile synergy of guilt and hope. And if you ever doubt whether I can see past the betrayal, remember, it was never about me forgiving you. It was about me saving myself from drowning in the aftermath. You will forgive me anyway. Maybe you already have in some strange sense, or maybe you never blamed me to begin with. But I blame myself for turning a blind eye to your loneliness, for letting that distance grow. That's a responsibility I'll carry. But at least I'm not carrying your confession in a tattered slip of paper anymore. We're both lighter now, no matter how many shadows still lurk. I'd like to think that's progress. I guess time will tell.